There was a statement that was made on an online post that I thought was worth looking at because it is a good question from someone who is not didn't grow up with the Christian background. A lot of people have questions about Christianity that doesn't really make sense if you didn't grow up with it. Now, they didn't word this as a question; they worded it as a very antagonistic comment um, on a Christian's post, but it is still worth thinking about. So, reworded as a question, it's since Jesus knew he would be resurrected, was his death really a sacrifice? Now, how they said it was um, Jesus' death wasn't really a sacrifice because he knew he would be resurrected. Now, I'm sure that this made sense to the person making the comment, but if we actually just stop for a second and think about it, I think we can find at least four big problems with this idea. First off, Jesus didn't deserve the death that he suffered. He didn't deserve to die. And then the shameful death of dying for us in the place of a sinner, he even more so did not deserve. And so that was obviously humiliating. That was unfair, if you think about it, that we should get off scot free and he should die for us. Furthermore, he is the king. And the king died for lowly peasants. Think about it in those terms. It, Jesus didn't deserve what happened to him. He did it in our place. It was a sacrifice for him because he made a way for us to be reconciled to God when we didn't deserve it, regardless of what that entailed for him. So, since Jesus knew he would be resurrected, was his death really a sacrifice? The second one, point that I want to make, is the reason he did it was because, being both God and man, he was the only one who could be the perfect sacrifice. So the reason for Jesus dying was because he was the only one who could die in our place. If we were to die, we would simply be getting what we deserved. God was the one who we sinned against, but God couldn't die in place of himself. You see what I'm saying? So he had to be both God and man, which I have talked about this in other videos, so I'm kind of trying to cut myself off before I get going down a rabbit trail. With that being said, so Jesus did this for a purpose. So it was a sacrifice. Not that it cost him, but it was a sacrifice. Okay? Like, maybe I sacrifice some of my time for my kids so that I can teach them how to do something, right? You get what I'm saying? It still is something that basically I'm trying to point to the fact that he was using sacrifice in the sense of it is only a sacrifice if it personally costs you something that it is irredeemable. And that's just a poor definition. I hope I'm using words that are relaying what I'm trying to get across. So the first thing, Jesus didn't deserve it. The second thing was the reason he did it was because he was the only one who could. He was the perfect sacrifice. He was a sacrifice. Not that it was a sacrifice for him. However, it was still a sacrifice for him, as I said in point 1, because he didn't deserve it. So that takes us to the third reason why I think that this question doesn't really have much basis to it. The knowledge of what would happen in the future doesn't invalidate the action. Jesus knowing that death is not the finality of all things, it does not mean that it wasn't, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. See, to us, who maybe believe in reincarnation, or maybe don't believe in any kind of a new life, or maybe we just believe that everything's just final at death, it might seem a little bit like, oh, okay, but he knew he was going to be resurrected. But that doesn't really invalidate it. He went through the suffering, and he made a way for us. Regardless of whether he had to stay in the grave or whether he could be resurrected, that's completely irrelevant. The knowledge of what would happen doesn't change the the impact of what happened. So that takes us to the fourth one, which is, these are all very closely related, but I think that they are very much so 4 distinct points. So the fourth point is that everyone will be resurrected. Jesus' knowledge that he would be resurrected doesn't invalidate what he does, because we will all be resurrected. Some to eternal life and some to eternal death. So that doesn't really carry the weight that I think he was trying to be real antagonistic and making fun of Jesus, like the sacrifice didn't mean anything, but that doesn't really make sense, because he didn't actually attack the argument that actually existed. So, everyone will be resurrected. Let's think about this, okay? Does the death of a soldier dying for his people, is that no less honorable simply because he knows that there is another life, that there's an afterlife? Who would say that? Who would look at the brave souls who stormed the beaches of Normandy and Iwo Jima and all this different stuff, and World War II and World War I and all these different things? Who would look at that and say, any sacrifice that was made, completely irrelevant? What? Just because somebody is aware that there's an afterlife doesn't mean that their sacrifice didn't mean anything. I mean, I feel like this goes without saying. And then the last little point I want to make, which really isn't a separate point, it's just something I want to point out. Death does not carry over the finality that some people think of anymore, right? Let me say that differently. Jesus' death doesn't carry the same finality that a lot of people associate with death. But neither does the death of any of God's people. And death's sting has been loosened. It's not a gripping thing as much anymore. And so pointing out to the fact that Jesus could look to the fact that he would be resurrected, the Bible even points to this. It says, he endured the suffering for what was coming afterwards. So Jesus knew this. The Bible points that out, and it actually should be something that encourages us as well. That, yes, we will all die, but we can choose how to die a lot of the times. And then with that death is not final. It's not the final word on something. Our death is not the end of the matter. We know that there's something better coming after this life that this life can't even compare to. So does that mean that any sacrifice that I make for somebody is irrelevant because I know that there's a better life waiting for me after my death? No. And neither does it invalidate the sacrifice that Jesus made on our behalf. I mean, here's another way of wording this. Jesus was fully 100% God. When we say that Jesus died, we're talking about his physical body, not his essence. Whenever anybody dies, their essence doesn't just disappear. Okay? Jesus is eternal, right? He took on a physical body, and that physical body died. He didn't cease to exist. He was still God. And then 3 days later, his physical body was resurrected. He now has a resurrected physical body. We were created at a point of time. We are not eternal. We will one day die. Our physical body will die. We will not cease to exist. And then the physical body will be resurrected, and we will have a resurrected body, and we will not turn into angels. This is just real simple Christian 101. And when you understand really the bigger picture of Christianity, you see that it really didn't have the same degrading argument that he was hoping to have against Jesus. So I hope that this clarifies that. In my opinion, it was not a very good question, and so I didn't put much effort into the answer. I'm sorry.